Her heart pounds. The sound of her heels echoes sharply on the polished airport floor. Two officers grip her arms tightly, their faces stern, unbending. The murmurs around her rise like a storm. Travelers stop. Phones lift. Strangers' eyes pierce her like arrows. She stumbles, but they don't loosen their grip. The announcement overhead fades into nothing as her voice breaks, low, steady, and defiant. You will regret this. Before we continue, if you're watching for the first time, Elliot Stories welcomes you with a warm hug. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and tell us the city you're watching from. She had boarded with a ticket paid in full. First class. Her seat was hers by right. But when she stepped onto that plane, when she laid her bag in the overhead bin, she felt it. That look. That stare from the flight attendant, sharp and disbelieving, as if her presence disturbed the order of things. "Ma'am," the attendant had said, her smile stiff, "are you sure you're in the right cabin?" The words carried poison disguised as politeness. The woman in blue had nodded calmly, but inside, she burned. "Yes. My seat is 3A. But the whispering started. A couple behind her leaned closer. A businessman across the aisle frowned. She adjusted her dress, her fingers trembling slightly, though her face stayed strong. Minutes later, another uniformed attendant appeared. "We're going to need to see your ticket again." She handed it over. They stared at it longer than necessary. Too long. Then came the call. Security. And now, her walk of humiliation through the terminal. Her phone vibrates in her hand. She lifts it to her ear, ignoring the officer's command to put it away. Her voice cracks, not with fear, but with resolve. "They dragged me off the plane. In front of everyone." On the other end, silence. Then a deep voice replies, calm and controlled, "We'll handle this. Just hold steady." Airports are places of departure and arrival, of journeys and reunions. But for her, that day, it was a courtroom. Every step was a trial. Every glance a judgment. The woman in blue felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders. As she was led through the crowd, a child's voice rang out, "Mommy, why are they taking her?" The innocence of the question cut sharper than any insult. The officer's jaws clenched, but they didn't answer. The woman's eyes flicked to the child briefly, then back to the path ahead. They locked her in a small interrogation room, white walls closing in. The hum of the air vent above filled the silence. "What crime?" she asked. Her tone steady, though her chest heaved. One officer cleared his throat. "We received a report." "From who?" she shot back. He avoided her eyes. They questioned her travel documents, her identity, her means. As if dignity must be proven. As if her presence in first class was an impossibility. Hours passed. Her phone buzzed again. She whispered into it. "They think I don't belong." The voice on the line answered firmly, "Record everything. Every word." What they didn't know was that she wasn't just a passenger. She was power wrapped in grace. She wasn't just an individual. They were dragging the name of someone far bigger than they realized. But she didn't reveal it. Not yet. She sat there, silent, calculating. The officer leaned closer. "People like you should understand that certain spaces aren't meant to be taken for granted." His words dripped with condescension. The woman in blue raised her head slowly, her eyes locking with his. "People like me," she repeated. "You'll remember those words." Outside, the airline executives were alerted. They rushed through corridors, whispers flying. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just an ordinary passenger. They didn't yet know whose world they were shaking. The woman's memory darted back to her childhood. To her mother's voice saying, "When they look at you and see less, stand taller." She heard it now, louder than ever. Her posture straightened. Her silence became louder than their questions. "Why were you in first class?" the officer pressed again. She smiled faintly. "Because I paid for it. Like everyone else." But injustice doesn't ask for receipts. It looks at skin, at gender, at assumptions etched deep into systems. They scribbled notes, exchanged glances, but they didn't release her. Hours blurred. The clock ticked. Passengers from the flight continued their journeys, while she sat in a cold room, dignity on trial. When they finally let her go, it wasn't with an apology. It was with a warning, "You may not be welcome on our flights again." She walked out of that airport as cameras flashed. Whispers turned into questions. Questions into headlines. Her phone rang once more. The voice on the other end said, "Now it begins." And as she stepped into the car waiting outside, her eyes were fierce. Her lips moved in a whisper. "They will know who I am." The world hadn't yet seen what would follow. The lawsuits. The revelations. The billions that would shift hands. But that day, at that moment, her silence carried more weight than any argument she could have made. What they thought was humiliation was the spark of something bigger. Something unstoppable. The woman in the royal blue dress wasn't just walking away. She was preparing for war. And when she struck back, it would shake the very foundation of the airline that dared to strip her dignity. But how? What secret did she hold? Who was she really? And why would this single act of discrimination cost the airline billions? The answers were waiting just beyond the horizon. The cold room fades. The car door slams shut. The woman in blue leans back, phone pressed to her ear. "It's time," she says quietly. The reply is immediate. "We're ready." That single night, what began as humiliation transformed into a storm. Files were opened. Records pulled. Lawyers called. She wasn't just a passenger with money, she was a shareholder. A strategist. And her influence spread far beyond that airport. Behind the closed doors of the airline's headquarters, panic brewed. Executives whispered frantically. "She owns how much?" one asked. 5%, another replied grimly. And with this incident, it won't stay at 5. Her silence had been strategy. Her calm, a weapon. She didn't just want an apology, she wanted accountability. And she had the power to demand it. Courtrooms filled. The story spread like wildfire. Discrimination in first class. The headlines screamed. Social media ignited. Videos from passengers surfaced. Strangers defended her. Her humiliation became proof of a deeper sickness. The airline's stock began to plummet. Investors pulled out. Confidence shattered. Then came the lawsuit. A claim not for millions, but for billions. 5 billion. Her lawyers stood tall as they laid out every detail, every insult, every policy that allowed prejudice to masquerade as procedure. The airline fought back. But each witness brought truth. Each recording exposed lies. And she stood in court, not as a victim, but as a voice for countless others who had been silenced. "You dragged me off a plane," she said firmly, her eyes steady on the executives across the room. "But what you didn't know was that you dragged your own reputation into the light." The world listened. The jury leaned in. And when the verdict came, it was thunderous. The airline was ordered to pay $5 billion. The woman in blue didn't smile in triumph. She only nodded slowly. It wasn't about the money. It was about the message. Justice is expensive. Dignity is priceless. And as cameras flashed once again, she said softly, "This wasn't just for me. This was for every person who was told they don't belong. Now they know we all belong." Her story became legend. Not because of wealth. Not because of revenge. But because courage spoke when silence was easier. She walked away from that courthouse free. Not just of the humiliation, but of the weight of invisibility. She had turned rejection into revolution. And the world will always remember the woman in the royal blue dress who taught a corporation that respect is not optional. This is Elliot Stories reminding you that no matter the darkness, light will always find a way. Visit Elliot Stories for more inspiring stories, and see you in the next one.